Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today looking at a cover of Cortez the Killer, which we checked out just a little bit ago, originally written by Neil Young. Today though, we're going to be looking at Slint covering this in 1989. This is a live audio or an audio of a live performance. I don't know what to think. After listening to Neil Young's version, I don't know what a Slint cover of it is going to sound like, given just how different these styles of music are. There's also an additional minute or so on this one that wasn't present on Neil Young's, so I don't know. I guess we should just jump into it. Let's dive in.
Yeah. We're from Louisville. Okay, all right, this is our last song. We're from Louisville, and we thought you needed to hear this. know what war was, but they knew how to work together. And they lifted many stones, and they carried them to the flatlands, but they died along the way. They built up with their bare hands what we still can't do today. She's good, and she loves me to this day. I still can't remember when or how I lost my way. Came dancing across the water. Cortez, what a killer. He came dancing across the water.
Okay, I guess this is about the same amount of time as the original then.
Have a big hand for Slint, not Flint, but Slint. But if you want to call him that, it's okay. Stick around for the clams from Minneapolis. And drink a lot, too. Well, anyway.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything else at the end of that. I'm fairly confident these last 5 seconds are just silence. This is an attempt, at least, to recreate the original note for note. At least that's what it sounds like to my ears. There is one key difference here, though. Ignoring the solo guitar part. When we look back at Neil Young's original, I had mentioned that it was kind of a folk track if you ignored, once again, the lead guitar. If you focus on just the bass, the drums, and this rhythm guitar and the vocals, you kind of just have a straightforward folk song. What I wasn't expecting, that if you put a bunch of amplification on this and turned it into Slint's sound, that you're gonna wind up with a pretty solidly dense, dramatic, moody atmosphere. I had mentioned that I felt some pain in the original, but that was mostly from the lead guitar. They really leaned into it though here, and they crafted a phenomenal post-rock atmosphere out of that. I think even in the sections where the lead guitar isn't as prominent, whether that's because they weren't playing or were properly emulating the original line, especially in the second verse section, which tends to be a little less pronounced, less playing, less notes from that guitar. These moments still stand on their own because the atmosphere of this is so dense, so textured. There's a lot of parts to it that I think just sound great. And given this recording itself, too, the lead guitar isn't always present in the mix as much as I would like them to be. And I'm not going to go on about the production of this. I have no idea how it was produced, but it's obviously a live performance with not optimal production on it. I think it's been touched up a little bit. It sounds listenable, but it's just not perfect. But we're not going to talk about that because, obviously this isn't a studio recording. But the guitar kind of gets hidden sometimes. I can't always hear what it's doing, but the rest of the song I think works well. Even without the vocals, it just creates this dense texture, this phenomenal atmosphere. And as far as I can tell, there's been no notes changed. This is exactly the same composition from the original. I think that is the most surprising element about listening to this, is how well the original actually works in a post-rock context. To just create something that resides in a feeling for a very long time and focusing on a type of weight within that. That the composition feels right at home in both folk and post-rock. It's just a matter of textural changes. And it makes me wonder what else this composition would work well within. What other songs would translate perfectly to another genre just by changing the sounds of the instruments or maybe the instruments themselves without actually altering the composition at all? So that was very neat. We got to bring up the guitar though. I find this to be exceptionally strange. The original song, I found the lead guitar part to feel noodly, almost improvised on the fly. There's parts of it where there's a couple notes that don't feel like they were the right ones. Some seems like little flubs, notes that were improperly muted. It was an accident, a little mistake, typical for live performances. And like I said, I do believe it is improvised, a single take. This feels like, at least the parts where I could clearly hear this lead guitar part, to be directly lifted from that. It's kind of bizarre to me because it's treating, possibly, again, I don't know if it was originally improvised, but it's treating something that was crafted on the fly, an expression of the self in the moment, as written music to be copied and emulated later on. And this feels kind of bizarre to me. Maybe it is because my main introduction and my main anchor for improvised music is jazz, of which I have performed. I've listened to a lot of, I've watched live performances of jazz. The solo is an expression of the self. The A section is what you copy. You play to the T, and you make sure that your version of that isn't too different from any of the other versions that have come before it, especially if you're playing a jazz standard, unless your goal is to completely redefine that song, which plenty of jazz composers over the years have done that. Let's take something we know and switch it up a little bit. But the thing is that in jazz, solos are kind of regarded as conversation. It's allowing one person to speak their mind musically. Imagine you're talking to somebody. You say a couple of sentences, and instead of them retorting back or expanding on them, they just repeat the same thing you said. That's kind of awkward. It's not a good conversation there. And that's how I view this. I really would have liked to hear Slint's version of this. What would their guitarist do in this situation? What are they feeling that night? What kind of elements can they add to the song? But instead, they took something that I'm still believing to be improvised as pre-composed as a core part of this song. And I suppose this adds another layer to the question. When Neil Young plays this song in the, after making the studio version, right, and he plays it live at a show, does he play the exact same thing? Because if so, then what Slint is doing here isn't unusual. It would be no different than covering metal and playing note for note the same solo that Kirk or James would play, because that isn't improvised. It is just the moment for the guitar to shine. It's a pre-composed melody, though. I suppose that does color a lot of this. What if my interpretation of the original is wrong? But, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't feel the emotion of Neil Young in this song. The distortion really destroys the nuance that Neil put into his performance. I don't really think that there is a good way to go about doing this, though. If they had played something a bit bluesier and southerner and lighter in the guitar tone, it wouldn't have matched the rest of the band. It would have felt out of place. But it doesn't feel right here either. It just feels like a guitar melody rather than one of the instrumentalists crying their heart out alongside a folk track, or in this case, alongside a post-rock track. I think generally it's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with the song, but it's missing the heart. A long time ago, we checked out Human Abstract, and they made a metal cover of Moonlight Sonata. And it was a fine cover. Technically impressive. They captured the movements well. It feels fine as far as metal goes, but there's a lot of nuance removed because we have the distortion and the amplification and the compression that you just can't capture the nuance of the original performance within this instrumentation. Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? Neither. But there is a subjective component to that. Do you enjoy this better than the original that had nuance in it? And in this case, with Slint, I don't think I do. I think this is a fine version, but it pales in comparison to the original. I don't want to harp on this final detail too long because it really is just one point, and I'm going to say it and we're going to move on, but the vocalist is exceptionally pitchy, and there's a couple of notes in there that are just really awkward. The drummer is kind of consistently out of time. There's some parts, particularly in the slower sections, and definitely closer to the end, where it just feels like every downbeat of a bar, the band is disconnected. They're not locked in for that downbeat. And so we have pitch issues, we have timing issues. I'm lacking the emotional elements in this. It's a total package of stuff that I just think doesn't work. I'm curious what other people think, though. If you've listened to the original, whether with me just a little bit ago or on your own time somewhere in the past, maybe in the future, I suppose, if you're watching this video after I'm recording it here. And now you're listening to Slint, though. Do you like this one more? Do you dislike it? Do you agree with my comparisons between the two and why I prefer the original over this cover? I'm kind of curious. I'd like to know where people sit on this one. But as for what the song is doing, like we've looked at a lot of technical elements of it. Knowing the lyrics, we checked them out yesterday, or just earlier today, not even yesterday. They're very fresh in my mind still. The opening stanza talks about Cortez coming up on the shores of Mexico. The last stanza talks about Cortez and him being a killer, which none of the song covers, but if you're familiar with 16th century Mexican history and the Aztecs and Cortez, you'll know that he was not a great dude coming on to... He was a conquistador, and he did a little bit of slaughtering when he landed. So, yeah, him being a killer. But the thing is, the rest of the lyrics are about the Aztec nation. That's not the nation, the culture. About let me pull the lyrics up real quick. Montezuma. And it talks about them building things and working together, but also the fact that they had sacrifices so that the sun would rise the next day, and a little bit of viewing them in a positive light, a little bit of viewing them in a negative light, and a lot of bit of not totally fictional things in there. And then we have one stanza that simply says, I know she's living there and she loves me to this day. I still can't remember when or how I lost my way, which is the only stanza in first person. I was very confused about the lyrics earlier today, and this song doesn't really change that. In fact, I find this version of the song to be even wildly more detached from the lyrical themes. At least with the folk element, I could kind of capture some of that feeling, but this is just a dreary, heavy, foreboding song. It's a massive weight on my shoulders. And then we just have a song where a narrator says, hey, there's some people over there. They build things. Yeah, some people died while building it, and they also had sacrifices, but they still built things that we would need machines to do today. Also, there's this woman over there that I'm sure she still loves. Oh yeah, and Cortez, dude, wasn't he a killer? And it's just, I don't get it. I don't get this song. And Slint, I think their version is inferior on every level. Now, I don't know where I was going with that. I still think it's a solid track, though. It's just not as good as Neil Young's, who I think had a very strong vision of what he wanted to do with it. And just because I don't understand that vision, at least I can see it. I can feel the emotion in it. Slint lost the nuance while also introducing performance discrepancies. I don't know if they needed a bit more time rehearsing it, or maybe they don't care about the flaws in a performance. I know this has been a contentious topic for the community and me in the past. I come from the world of classical and jazz. You practice and practice and practice and really nail it down and perfect it, be a robot in your performance of it while still allowing for the emotive elements. And, I've run into some of y'all doom metal fans, punk fans, where the rawness, the imperfection is the beauty in the song. And this might just be another place where we butt heads a little bit, but I find the imperfections in this to be a massive negative. Further blemishes on a track that I'm already seeing as not done as well as the original, even if it was perfectly covered. So, yeah, we're going to wrap this one up. I'm probably going to take some flack on this one, given how harsh I am on it. But, y'all don't come here to watch me sugarcoat stuff. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel about it. And that's how I feel about this one. I've I've been very positive about Slint in the past. Spiderland is an album I still want to get around to listening to one day, as I've enjoyed the tracks I've heard from it. This just ain't it. So these are my thoughts. Cortez the Killer by Slint, originally by Neil Young. What did you think of this? Did you enjoy it? Did you dislike it? Is there anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Also, I asked earlier just any opinion about this cover in general. Put any of that and any thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. It'll take you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for this one. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 p.m. 9 p.m. UTC. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, with the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.